697 players on Steam. That is what Concord, Game of the Century, Game of the Decade, has managed to get. And just for a little bit of fun, what I thought I'd do is compare it to my previous favorite FPS game, Lawbreakers. On the 8th of August 2017, Lawbreakers launched to just shy of 3,000 players. So yes, Lawbreakers, a game that rapidly died, it got 3K at its launch, and Concord has really struggled. I mean, right now as I record this video, just a few days after launch, it's 267 players. 267 players. Now, if this was, some sort of small indie or something, big thumbs up, very happy. The thing is, though, this is a likely well north of 100 million, probably way more than that, from Sony. It's a game that they probably thought would be their next stage in the grand live service plan, the one, of course, that had Helldivers 2 do very, very well, was probably going to involve this doing very well, and then maybe, of course, the likes of Marathon would come out, and maybe even The Last of Us, and all of those lovely ambitions that Sony had. But this, oh man, we're going to get into things, because a lot of people will be saying, did the internet just kill this game because it laughed at it? And there's a degree there. It's an inherently mockable game because of how risk-averse it is. But in being as risk-averse as it is, it has ended up being an extremely risky game. I mean, can you imagine showing up to a genre that was new in 2016, in the year 2024, with no real immediate points of differentiation, and thinking that that is going to work? Yeah, this is a crazy one, and honestly, I can't wait to talk about it, because we're going to learn a hell of a lot. We're going to pay the bills with today's sponsor. Boot.dev/Bellular News. They exist to teach you backend development using Python and Go, and to solve the problem of tutorial hell, right? And that means you stopping aimlessly wandering around scattered tutorials, because with Boot, you can follow a structured learning path rooted in fundamentals and made by people who are actually pros in the field. And at boot.dev/Bellular News, you'll get 25% off your first purchase. Now, they have a wealth of in-depth content, and that ranges from the basics like learning Python all the way up to more advanced projects and topics that are very, very much career applicable. And woven through all of that, quests, levels, XP, achievements, and a ton of fellow students over on their very active Discord. Now, they've also posted a 7-hour walkthrough of their Python course. That is a perfect time to start. You've got a companion to go along with it, and by the time you do that, you will feel accomplished. Like, I remember when I was starting off doing code, and when a lot of that just clicked in my head, it felt fantastic. And beyond that, there is so much content and fun projects like building a Pokédex, learning object-oriented programming through RPG combat examples, that kind of thing, stuff that you understand. From experience, I know that self-directed learning is the best here. And that's why Boot is giving you all that you need in one place and with proper depth. So you'll write a hell of a lot of code, you'll learn real skills, and that's at boot.dev/Bellular News, where you'll get 25% off your first purchase, and that's backed by their no questions asked 30-day money-back guarantee, and they have got free demos of all of their courses, so you can literally just go and check all of it out now. Now, the first thing for us to know about this game is it's not being completely ravaged by audiences. I mean, it's not great, but if you take a look at Steam, you do see about 70%. It was 72 earlier, it's 70.5 now, and what you find, and you notice this when you look at the gameplay footage, just maybe don't look at the characters, look at the gameplay footage. That is some pretty polished shooting. They have some novel ideas to try and shake up the hero shooter format a little bit, but none of that has been able to cut through in any way whatsoever, and, well, that's what we've got to talk about mainly here. You see, there's a phrase, it doesn't matter how hard you row, it matters what boat you're in. And what that phrase essentially means, right, is sometimes you can be in a situation that is just foobar. It does not really matter how much you individually try, it's just kind of screwed. And what I'd say here is, I totally understand why Sony looked at what this studio had and bought it, right? Because I bought the studio very early on. Because when you look at the gunplay, when you look at a whole bunch of points of execution within this game, it looks beyond competent. Like, actually, whenever people go into this game, they often say they're surprised that actually some bits of it are more fun than they thought. But it turns out there's more to a game than just the mechanics. There's how the game is presented to people, how it makes them feel, the character designs. This is absolutely what the internet's been rightly concerned about. And yeah, they are straight up awful. But I want to talk a little bit about why they're kind of awful. And I think the most important thing about this to understand, and whenever I say it's not how hard you row, it's what boat you're in, when you look at the actual staff working in this game, probably the lion's share of the headcount, they're probably doing great work, trying their hardest. But again, it's not about how hard you work, it's about what boat you're in. And in this case, a lot of this stuff is doomed to failure because of creative direction, because of technical decisions, ones that may even be a little bit Sony related, and just a whole stack of things. So here, what we're critical of, right? We're critical of power structures, we're critical of executives, we're critical of people who have got roles of responsibility, because that's the entire point of you being senior something, or lead something, or director of something, right? And I swear this one's kind of rough. So thing number one, what they're basically going for here style-wise is a lot of 70s sci-fi. If you changed some of the, I'd say the rendering, the sort of shading of this game, you could see a few of its ideas fitting in okay with the likes of, say, No Man's Sky, because they do have, a lot of sort of shared inspirations when it comes to some of their visuals, their color palettes, what they're trying to go with. The problem here, though, is things haven't worked. Compare these characters to the characters of Overwatch. Now, I know that Overwatch has ended up becoming a decently controversial game, right? There's been maybe 5v5's the thing that was the killer for you. Maybe it was Overwatch 2 going free to play, whatever. That's not really what this is about. What this is about is character design. When you look at the characters of Overwatch, what do you see? You see, number one, it's a very diverse cast of characters, right? So that's one thing that's pretty obvious. You see very different silhouettes. You also see that Blizzard push the levels of stylization. Whereas you look at Concord and you see the odd character that does have a strong silhouette that actually stands out. One off, the tank character. That's one that makes sense. However, broadly speaking, you have a lot of pretty bog standard looking people with, there's some differences in their silhouettes, but they're not pushing the level of stylization anywhere close to what, say, Overwatch is doing. Indeed, to me, they look like you took the character creator from, really any modern game, just hit the randomize button, and you just kept on hitting it, and you just grabbed 10 random ones and made those your characters. That's what they kind of look like. They also, for me, sort of run into another thing, which is the quirky, modern, hip, psychopath murderer problem. And this is one that I really keenly felt when I was looking at the reboot of Saints Row, where they clearly tried to make these characters be relatable to maybe a modern, younger audience who would perhaps play Saints Row 2 and just not get a load of references, not really sort of get what it's going for. But then it's a bit weird, because what Saints Row, the new one, sort of felt like, tonally, was, the people in the Nintendo Switch adverts where they're all these, cool, hip, city people, and they're going to rooftop parties with their Nintendo Switches, and, they all look hot, they're all well-dressed, they're all just these cool young people. It's as if those people are going around with guns killing people. And they're still sort of being played off in the quirky whatever way. And look, I know every time somebody says ludonarrative dissonance, a bunch of angels lose their wings and just fall to the ground and die. I get it. But I do think that is a little bit jarring. Now, you may be thinking, okay, Michael, but why, when making a hero shooter, would a company not want to push the stylization? Take a look at the art style of Valorant. Take a look at the art style of Overwatch. Take a look at the art style of Deadlock. That's not photoreal. Look at these guys. They basically look like a bunch of Marvel previs characters, because yes, you look at this game and you immediately think, aha, yes, it's a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy and the Rebel Alliance. They've been mashed together. Which again makes sense when you think about the inspirations. Thing is though, one of the features they're really talking up here is these animated story sequences that you get every week. And you sort of look at those and you're like, okay, what is the point of you making a movie? And by the way, did you know that not all movies have got to look like they're trying to be photoreal? As an example, you could point to all of the Overwatch cinematics that people absolutely loved. So that's the strange thing. The push for photoreal has essentially stripped them of loads of stylistic tools and stylistic language that they would otherwise be able to use to make these characters stand out. So to go through them, Lennox. What does Lennox look like? Lennox basically looks like a Star Trek alien randomizer. And look, I love Star Trek. I love Trek. But not really feeling it here, especially thinking about what this game is, especially thinking about the market that it is entering into. And that is the stuff you just sort of got to keep in your mind. Vale, again, just person in armor. Doesn't really look like the sort of character who could be leading what is actually a hero shooter. Now, the thing is, when you actually look at that character's design, if they were freed from the shackles of photoreal, and if they made some different decisions, you could see essentially that character archetype be executed real well. But you are just not seeing that here. As you keep on going, you got your Star Child and your Deveres, who I suppose are fine, but then when we get to the Rangers, I think the Rangers basically show the best and the worst, because you look at Tio here, poor Tio, oh man. Tio, again, feels like there's a photoreal Star Wars MMO, you've chosen the Rebel Alliance faction, and hit the randomize button a few times. Now, the one character who here I actually do think works out quite well is Duchess. And again, this is where we start to think about character design. Duchess looks more like a relatable human in terms of proportions. Definitely older. You get the feeling, okay, this character probably isn't super strong, like just punching people, but you see all of the like golden stuff all, up their arms and everything, and you think, oh, well, maybe she's got some crazy magic shit going on. That actually is really cool. So I think Duchess is probably the one of the characters that does stand out to me. And the funny thing is, I wanted to go through this character by character, but honestly, as I recorded, it's just boring because I end up saying the same thing again, which basically just boils down to design, generic, silhouette, generic, style, not pushed far enough to really work for a hero shooter. It just boggles the mind that this stuff ended up being made by professionals, but that's the thing. The people who made all this stuff, they're working to a spec. The problem is the spec that they are working to, and that is obviously something that falls on like the higher level, creatives and stuff like that. And even thinking about in terms of like wanting to have like heavier characters, you can see there's a few where they've tried to do that with like Daw and Amari. We actually just look at the character silhouettes, they just look inflated. Like, they're weird. I can't put my finger on it. But then you look at how Blizzard approached essentially the same spec with some of its characters in Overwatch, and you see, oh, guess what? They have some real damn good character designers, and funny enough, that's why Overwatch was so goddamn appealing and had such a large variation of characters in terms of shapes and sizes and backgrounds and everything. And it was great because Blizzard did that. They pushed the style. They tried to make everyone feel different, and it worked. Whereas here, that doesn't happen. Even just like when you look through all of the characters, the level of like color desaturation, everything is just mud. It boggles the mind. And there's the other side of this I've noticed a lot online, and certainly like you go to any videos comments on this and you will see people saying, aha, the game is woke, and that is why all the characters are ugly. Now, I suppose you can, people can maybe see some correlation, causation, whatever, but here's the thing. Overwatch is a very diverse game, right? People from all different backgrounds and ethnicities and sexualities and all. And its character designs are great. Like, that's the thing. They're great. So when I look at this, I don't see that George Soros has appeared and said, make all the characters ugly. Nah. No, I just see really bad character designs. And I suppose, look, if you're somebody and, the reason why you're making a game like this and, maybe you want to do the representation real good, I'd say, well, if that's really what you want, it also is on you to do a good job, right? To actually make shit that is good. And that is, I think, the main problem here. I don't think that it's ideology stuff that's ruining this game. I just think it's bad character design. The bit that matters the most is it good? That's the main issue. These are just really shit designs, and like I've brought them to people that I know very closely who have pulled in like millions and millions and millions in terms of investment for things directly off the strengths of character design. So I'm talking about people who know character design, market validated know character design. Do you know what their reaction to this is? What a bunch of uninspired trash. Those look really bad. How did this get that far? A lot of this could just be the company. Is this a company where they're not particularly critical of each other? Because whether it is center, left, right, we all know of companies and institutions and stuff where shit just ain't critical, because I think when actually rubber hits the road in the real world, so much is about the quality of execution and just that level of competence. And while this team has definitely got it in, actually a lot of their animation work, some of which is pretty impressive, they've clearly got the stuff in many ways. It's just there really does seem to be some sort of blind spot when it comes to the core designs here. Now, maybe they look at your, your Guardians of the Galaxies and stuff, but the thing is, if you come into the market looking like a knockoff of Guardians into a genre that, was a big thing 8 years ago and with a pretty weak offering that doesn't really have much in the way of points of differentiation. It brings me to what I tweeted about this. Don't make your art, dialogue, marketing, and gameplay as derivative as this team's leadership did. Much of the game's execution is solid, but it's a lifeless vision. Bring the market fresh. Tightness of gunplay doesn't matter if the trailer has people mocking you. And the reason why the trailer was basically mocked by people is because this just looked derivative. It just looked like Sony said, "Hello, chef, I'd like a hero shooter, please," because we're a part of Jim Ryan's big push into live services, and that means we need a hero shooter. And I guess now that they're here with this game, 8 years after the hero shooter, I suppose by the time Marathon comes out, they'll be pretty much just on time with their extraction shooter. And that's the thing that gets me. So much of this feels like we are going to make an entry in the genre and we're going to put a lot of money into it. But here's the thing. Tarkov exploded because it was doing something that felt new and different. Yes, Overwatch had clear inspirations. I mean, come on, it's Blizzard. They're not the most original bunch, but the thing is they're not hiding that. They're proudly basically saying, look, we're not trying to invent the wheel. We're just trying to refine it so that you guys fucking love it. And that's generally when Blizzard was at its peak success. That is what it successfully, was able to do. Here, though, you can't get away with this. How does this open up a new market? How does this open up a new segment of this market? A really good example of that being done well is Valorant, because Valorant takes some of the things that people will like from an Overwatch, but it's obviously far more of a Counter-Strike. And while you could say it's a Counter-Strike clone, you look at how Valorant has actually played a lot of the detail there, and no, it differentiates itself. More than that, it differentiates itself stylistically, culturally, tonally, right? It does all of those things to feel new and unique. And that is exactly what we do not see here, because you look at any element of this game, and you can immediately see what it was basically copied and lifted from. And while there are aspects of gameplay in Concord that are actually really well executed, that do stand out a little bit, it's not enough to make people think, oh my god, I have got to jump in and play that. And this is a massive contrast to Helldivers 2. And I said this on Twitter, and some people sort of said back to me, what are you talking about? That's just Starship Troopers. Here's the thing though, Helldivers 2 does enough to make it feel different. So let's think about what Helldivers 2 is. It is built off elements that are readily understandable by basically everybody, and it combines them together in a way that feels new and different and rather delightful. That's why it ends up being successful, because it's not just a big pew 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 shoot game. No, it actually has some milsim elements. Think about how the reloading works. Think about, everything going on with stratagems, all the little quirks and points of differentiation in that game. The fact that they take their style and they push it to 11 so that I was able to call my spaceship the Stallion of Freedom, which is stupid and fun. And I'm not saying that this game has to do that, but it needed to do something. And the something that they ended up doing, would you like a hero shooter that's Guardians of the Galaxy? And everyone's shooting guns. And the market profoundly doesn't give a shit. And from watching gameplay, from watching reviews, it's not coming in and delivering stuff that's surprising and delightful. I think they're trying to count on how they have these expensive, mo-capped, cutscenes, like every week or whatever. That's not gameplay, and people won't care because look at the characters. People cared about Overwatch because basically the entire population looked at Mercy and said, oh dear, please squish my face in, right? Like, none of that's happening with any of this. So this is a concept been worked on for 8 years. The studio formed in 2018 and acquired, of course, by Sony because they looked at the gameplay, were like, oh, that shit's tight. Probably looked at some of the other things they were doing, thought, wow, photoreal characters, cool. Well, this looks like a Sony thing. That's just not thinking about the reasons why players pick up a game, the experiences that players want. You either need to create some sort of new niche or meaningfully iterate in something to the point where it feels like a new genre, Overwatch, the hero shooter, right? You need to do something like that. Or maybe with, say, World of Warcraft. And yes, I'm using Blizzard examples because there's a reason why the fundamental appeal that Blizzard was able to tap into, like, got them as successful as they were, right? Well, look at World of Warcraft. Was it doing much, like, new and different? In some ways, no. There were loads of MMOs before, but in other ways, yeah. Because what they did is they took a niche that is niche but very sticky, and they made it radically more approachable to people. So whenever you're thinking about a game, it can't just be another entry into the market. You only get away with that if you are some sort of very powerful incumbent, but you cannot crack into a market like that. To talk about another game that is doing very well right now, with like, what, 70, 80, maybe even 200k concurrents, I don't know by the time you see this video, it's Deadlock. Now, is Deadlock just another hero shooter? No, it's not. It's hero shooter Dota. Like, big in the Dota. Way more MOBA than you'll be getting in this game, or an Overwatch, or a Valorant, obviously, right? So it is doing things in the market to make it different, in the way that maybe some FPS players were lured into Valorant and maybe away from some other games, even though obviously CS2's got an amazingly strong audience. Something like Deadlock may be able to take that fundamentally strong hero shooter gameplay, but get people out of League, out of Dota, and over to it. That's a really great way to sort of expand a new little part of your genre. And that's basically the point with Concord. It is not doing any of those things. And when you look at Sony's biggest wins, what have they done? They've basically succeeded those tests that I put out. So let's talk about a few of them. The Last of Us, because part 2 had a more controversial story. A lot of people rolled their eyes and be like, oh, movie game, whatever. No. See, when it came out, Last of Us was groundbreakingly good in its execution. That's obviously why it went so big, right? God of War. Pretty much the same thing again. Are there games that have gotten more in-depth, dare I say, more fun or whatever combat systems? Sure. That's not the point. That came together as a gameplay and narrative experience executed at a level of quality that surprised and delighted people to the point where they needed to tell their friends about it because it was that goddamn good. The new Spider-Man games. Do you know what they were able to do? They were able to harness the new technologies that we have these days to give us a Spider-Man experience in a way that really other games just weren't doing. And they executed it to a pretty goddamn high level of competence. And of course with Helldivers 2, it's that same thing. It's broadly appealing. It's emotionally compelling, and when you actually just go through the specific details of the gameplay, there is so much it's not even inventiveness in a form where they're purely generating new stuff. It's more just inventive remixing, which is actually one of the most powerful things that you can do, because if you make something so new, people don't really understand what to do with it. Maybe you got a first mover advantage, but you're not resonating with people. What you want to do is to be a little bit later, but to deliver your mechanics, your gameplay, whatever it is, in a way that is approachable, understandable, I guess, to use the Steve Jobs, computers, the bicycle of the mind. The thing that matters the most is the user experience. Yeah, you just look at this, you look at Concord and you're like, okay, nothing really new or interesting has happened here. Of course, this was never going to work. And I think the problem is Sony strategically thought, oh yeah, we're goddamn Sony. Look how many PS4s we have. Way over 100 million. Look how big our market is. We're just guaranteed to win if we have the core quality of the game be good. I mean, is this some sort of lolcow game where people buy it and they give it a terrible, terrible review? No, it's got 70 in Steam. Now, I'm not going to try and tell you that 70 is an amazing score, because it isn't. But it's not the score of something that immediately seems like a turbo flop. And that's essentially the thing. The main problem with Concord is it just didn't really do anything to set itself apart in the market. This is just doing nothing expansionary and nothing to lure people away from other games. Like, here's the thing, people who are interested in this, probably people are interested in Overwatch too. Okay, look at Overwatch 2. Every single character is more visually appealing. I mean, I like the robot. I think the robot's pretty cool, actually. I don't know, I like the Duchess. She looks like she does cool magic shit. But by and large, nothing here holds a candle to Overwatch. Not even close. So how are you going to steal Overwatch players? Maybe if this game came out 4 years ago, whenever Overwatch 1 just had its support stop for Overwatch 2 to happen, maybe they could have done something, but honestly, with those characters, no. And look, because there's the modern, culture war thing that is unavoidable when talking about this on the internet, it's just the way that it is, I'll at least, share the perspective, and this isn't to speak for other people, it's just to share what I've encountered in my real life. Overwatch appeals to, to progressive people. And while this game may be trying to appeal to that same demographic, the people I know who liked Overwatch back when it came out, and, who would be, LGBT, they liked how the characters were hot, were appealing. Many of those same people, I can literally say, look at this and I'm like, oh, that's boring. So I don't think this is some grand political thing. Doesn't matter if you're an amazing engineer, if you're handed a terrible blueprint and you just execute it by the letter. It's like, yeah, you might be a great engineer, but blueprint was busted, so the end result's bad. That's just what's happened here, everyone. So, yeah, I don't expect to be talking about this much anymore because, frankly, what else is there to say? I've probably already, as we would say here in Northern Ireland, I've already torn the arse out of this one. So, anyway, that's it. I've torn the arse out of it. I'm flogging a dead horse. This horse just fell over and broke its neck right out of the gate, didn't it? Anyway, that's it. That's it for me. Let me know what you think about all this. Boy howdy, what a story. Sony, you silly sausages. Come on. You're not entitled to success because you've sold a lot of consoles. You actually have to win, people. That's it for me. Let me know what you think. Goodbye.